And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. A Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This Vlogcast started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect because it's snowing up here in the Buffalo market today. It's snowed. Yay. Whoopie ding.
I want snow.
Soon. Don't worry about it.
I got snow.
Send it to me.
It's all good. Part of this is to follow through with the old adage, sometimes a journey is more important than the destination. I'm your main host. I'm known as Shujin Tribble all over the place. Shujin. You can find me pretty much under any social media under that. It's kind of hard to miss me. Hi.
I'll use a laser sight next time.
You try that. Let me go ahead and introduce you to the crew. We've got one down at the moment. I'll explain in a second. Top left-hand corner, North America's bingo card, Calgary Way. Morning, Dalan.
Good evening.
Oh, that's right. Good evening. I forgot. Your clock is out of power behind your shoulder.
It's in need of a battery change. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, I noticed that last week, and I completely forgot to tease you about it.
Well, hey, I look at it this way. With the time change that happened recently, it was one less one for me to have to deal with.
Point taken. South of me into Pittsburgh, where it is still cold and just it's early. Good morning, Joey.
And wet.
Yeah, tell me about it. To the right from there, outside of there's new people moving in this upcoming week in two. UnrenownedTech. Good morning.
You know, I wonder if they're starting to think about reviving that whole better dead than red campaign that they did, except instead of referring to communists, referring to Republicans. Because sure as in hell, a lot of people voted that way, as if that slogan was in effect. Good morning to you too. I've got my flannel and my hot chocolate. I'm doing great.
Democracy is non-negotiable.
Yes, there's a thing about that I'll explain in a moment. And over the water, over into Paris, a little bit different time for you at this point. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. In Russia, democracy does you.
I should be so lucky. Okay, so
I'm sorry, I'm not a bottom.
Look, if that particular individual named Democracy, I don't know. I hate to sound objectifying here, but depending on the look, I might bottom.
Yeah, UnrenownedTech. I'm gonna give you a 2 for right about now. Democracy, if I remember right, is Greek. So as far as bottoms are concerned, I've known you're an ass for a very long time. So you're welcome.
Not to be confounded with.
That's a double. That's a double right there.
We are 2 minutes in, and we've already flown completely off the rails, ladies and gentlemen. This has got to be a first.
I blame the hot chocolate, not enough marshmallows.
There were rails?
Oh, dude, Tech, you've got the wrong additive for your hot chocolate.
What he say that?
Cointreau.
What is that?
Cointreau. Cointreau.
Okay, Cointreau.
Cointreau.
Okay, I know I speak for everybody here when I say that's Greek to me. Second time I'm using the word Greek tonight. So
yeah, at any rate, it is a somewhat less expensive version of Grand Marnier, and would turn that lovely cup of hot chocolate into a liquid Terry's chocolate orange.
Send me a link to the stuff, would you?
Yeah, I tested a theory out a couple of weeks ago on that stuff, and needless to say, it was a resounding success. And I just returned back from the United States there a couple of weeks ago with 2 great big boxes. Well, 2 6-puck packages of Abuelita chocolate.
Like I said, could you send me like an informal link to it or something later on? Or heck, we could put this one in the show notes. Atheist recipes. Ooh, there's a podcast I'd love to hear. Recipes for the Heathen Front.
See what we can do about that. While they're doing that, let me go ahead and throw you guys in.
Okay, throwing it in open chat here.
Yeah, you go ahead and do that.
Okay, bechamel baby sauce.
Later.
I will say this. I introduced my SO to Canadian maple syrup. And to say impressed was an understatement for that person.
I'm
They
going to take
thought
this
they
moment
had,
and be smug.
they're like they hadn't even had New York's finest. So I just figured, you know what? I'm going for the top level. We're just going to go and do the howitzer.
And suddenly I'm thinking of that paste pecani sauce commercial. This syrup's made in New York City. New York City!
Get a rope.
See, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. You do it right. This one right here.
Exactly.
President's Choice Maple Syrup comes in its own hip flask. Glass hip flask. This is the stuff. No, dude, seriously, this is the stuff where after I bought it, because I saw it on the shelf at
Throw
Real
that up there
Canadian
again?
Superstore. Sure. Let me get that over there for you. There you go. I actually tried it. I bought a bottle because I saw it at Real Canadian Superstore at St. Cat's on the way home. And I said, okay, you know what? It's $13 Canadian. Okay, it's a little expensive, but okay. I literally took a warmed up shot of this stuff on its own and sipped. I warmed it in the microwave, warmed slightly, and it was fracking delicious. I've never tasted anything like it before. And is it any, I mean, seriously, if ever you get the opportunity to try and like good stuff like this, oh, it's amazing.
Oh, it's available on Amazon.
Yeah,
same bottle.
Yeah. You might end up finding it for about almost $50 US, $30 US. So you might want to be a little bit careful about that.
You mean 25?
Okay, yeah, that could be
roughly 17 ounces. That's the glass bottle.
Okay, because I don't know how many ounces it is, but it's 500 mil on the label. But be that as it may.
Yeah, that's a 500 mil.
Okay. So yeah, you'll end up playing.
Yeah, see, this is
double.
one of the light ones. I got her a dark one. I wanted to go with something darker in color for the experience.
Okay. Well, now that we've completely bored everybody out of the first 10 minutes of the show, hi.
I'm not bored.
Shh, not you. The people that are listening. Hi. Yes, we're talking to you. Hi. How you doing? So, Heretic Woman is not feeling real great, so she's decided to bow out tonight. Fine, whatever. As far as Brigid is concerned, I don't know where she is right now. But you know full well, if she can make it, she will, and if she can't, she doesn't. So it's kind of the way it works. Try to take care of yourself. So for those of you that are, paying attention to us live right now, thank you very much. Of course, please take advantage of the live chat so we can chat it up with you. I know for full well Stephanie's there. Hi.
Orange cognac.
We're not using the term orange anytime soon. There's reasons because I don't want to get started on that.
Why? Because we can't go one day without our country looking like a freaking horse's ass.
You know what? You said it, and okay, yes, I have too, but that's not today. Not today. Anyway,
I'm sorry. I've got to bring this up. We had protests in multiple states, multiple cities in multiple states regarding the president's choice with this whole investigation and everything else. And there was a protester who had a sign up. And on the sign, it had one of the less flattering pictures of Donald Trump, where he's kind of got that weird overbite grimace thing going on. He looks like a real, like somebody who needs to wear a white helmet. Because he looks like he's about to bash his head against something because he's trying to think and failing miserably. And the words that were on there, on that same sign said, "Does this ass make my country look small?" And I thought to myself, that's a great sign. I love that sign. I want to find that person. I want to give them a very big hug.
Considering your size, I don't think there's too many choices in size of hug that you could give.
Well, I can give a regular hug and I can give a bad hug.
I was going to say bear hug, but I don't think that you're from LA, personally speaking. So you're welcome.
I'm from New York. We have Grizzlies.
Again, this is another Greek joke. That's 3 in the day, and we haven't even started. So
Well,
I never took Greek. It was all Greek to me.
if that's the case, Shujin, you should have said San Francisco.
I could have, I should have, but of course, I don't know anything about that culture.
That's
Funny
a
that you
completely
should.
different context of bear there.
If we're discussing that particular vernacular, then yes, San Francisco.
Okay.
San Francisco is the general recognized one.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind for next time then.
You can thank the 60s and 70s for that.
Yes. For those of you that are understanding the jokes, good on you. You're our type of people. Those of you that don't get it just yet, ask your parents. Trust me, they'll love explaining this stuff to you. Trust me. So let me go ahead and get everything rolling over here because
We've had one interesting opening so far, in my opinion.
yeah, because there's stuff. Anyway, let me go ahead and roll everything for you guys. So with 5 minutes on the clock, your 5-minute freestyle starts right now. Facts is what I got. I'm getting really sick and tired of the idea that people don't care about facts. Ideology? Yes. Ideology trumps facts. I know. Just go with me on this one for a second. It's just leave the bad connotation of the word Trump out of the equation for a second. I was earlier. I was kind of explaining a discussion that I was getting into on Facebook earlier. Somebody who is very pro-military, very pro-Republican, very pro-Second Amendment, and apparently doesn't have anything to, and very hateful. And I may not be using hyperbole here. Very antagonistic. That I can get away with towards all things Democrat and all things. My God, they're coming for my guns. Now, they were going to go ahead and forward a post with a video that had something to do with this. And part of the text that went along with it was somebody's quote that said that the AR-15 should not be in civilian hands. Now, I kind of discussed part of this with Joey a little bit before we went to air, and we kind of got on that sidetracked a little bit to the whole damn thing. So here's what happened. I went ahead and said, okay, look, I'm not even going to look at that video just yet. I want to discuss just that quote because that's apparently a really important quote because it was added secondarily to the video. So I went and I looked up the information about the AR-15. I wanted to know where it came from, why it came, what it was designed to replace, the pedigree of the whole damn thing, where its niche is, what its capabilities were, and what variants. And after going through all of that, I have come to the determination, based on the information that I have currently about its capability, the civilian marketed version versus the military marketed version, that the AMLite AR-15, not AR-15 type, the AMLite AR-15, which is functionally capability identical to the M16. My opinion. Sorry.
Almost.
Okay, I'm gonna pause a second. What almost are you talking about?
Some vital component differences in the trigger housing.
Okay.
Namely, those that control rate of fire and
Yes. Now I have not restarted the timer, but let me just say really quickly, the capabilities of both weapons are functionally identical for what can be hit and at what distance and with what power.
Well, that's ballistics. No.
Yes. That's the capability of the weapon.
Yes.
We agree on that part.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to restart the counter here.
Apologies.
Functionally, the two are identical. The major difference being how many rounds can be fired per squeeze. My opinion, based on the information, is that this is not the type of weapon a civilian should own. This is the type of weapon that is designed to hunt armored people at distance. To that end, my opinion is that, yes, the AR-15 and similar is not the type of weapon that should be in civilian hands and usage, especially not for quote-unquote home defense, because this weapon will fire through a house and through a person for who only knows how far out of those 500 yards effective range it might end up going. Now, admittedly, these kinds of things, you know, there are a lot of factors into play, but going by the bare numbers, this looks to be far too dangerous downrange. It could conceivably fire through a car door or a front door, windows, thin walls that don't have brick to them. You get the idea. You miss, you got another 490 yards that bullet is going to travel. And I don't know what's 500 yards past where I am right now, other than just woods. But then again, I know full well that all I live with are woods.
Tree had it coming.
Here's the problem. I laid out all the facts. I laid out dry facts. And I laid out my opinion based on dry facts. And I even said, if you're going to go ahead and argue with my position, if you're going to go ahead and call me a libtard or whatever the current running ad hominem thing is, don't do that. Just tell me where my information is wrong. Tell me what the right information is. Tell me where you get your information from so I can evaluate it. And then I laid out my information and my specs and said, please just, if I'm wrong, correct me. Try to guess what I ended up with. The first thing out of the gate was, you Democrats are only looking to grab guns. I'm paraphrasing. This is not a military weapon. Brother, when you can shoot through a helmet at 500 yards, because that's what it's spec'd for, and you've still got a piece of metal that's got a lot of velocity after that, I'm sorry. But like I told the guys before, there's only one animal that I can think of that you would need that kind of power to hunt. And that's a bear. An adult bear with its skull. If you're hunting anything else with something like this, seriously, the only other viable option is either the human that you're pointing it at right now, or the human that's past that point, because you don't know how far that round is actually going to end up. And in some towns, that 500 yards is 2 city blocks. How many people could that possibly hit? How many kids? It's episode 235 on the docket, Your Honor. I have to say it this way because it was the way it was going through in my head as I was writing it.
Shujin,
Wait.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that before we get to today's topic, just on the topic of your 5-minute, I do want to say, as a veteran, as a former AR-15 owner, and as a current gun owner, I actually agree with you. A civilian should not own an AR-15. I will say that by my interpretation of the Second Amendment, and I know others have similar interpretations, that a civilian is allowed to. However, I agree with you, and in an ideal circumstance, you're right. Civilians should not own one.
As far as to what guns, quote unquote, should be versus are versus how they should be, we've kind of covered part of that, and I've made my stance on that out there before. I mean, I've been more than happy to talk about it another time. This is not going to be one of those times. That's going to be something for a ways off, because we've ended up talking a lot about my country, and I really don't want to be doing that too often because, well, you guys know full well I don't want to make it about just the America, because I mean,
hey,
everybody talks.
It's important that other countries know some of this stuff about us, because France and Canada and Australia and so many countries have put out travel warnings to the people like, look, if you're black and you're heading to the United States, you might get shot. If you're Muslim and heading to the United States, you might get shot. Hey, there's high counts of gun violence. There's been 300 plus what classifies for as mass shootings in the last year in the United States in these kinds of areas. So if you're going into this area that's this kind,
where have you seen these warnings?
Huh?
Where have you seen these warnings?
International travel warnings. They pop up. Different countries have them.
Of course,
you have to go to their travel sites, and you'll see the warnings.
Of course, the one from Australia, it's actually listed under benefits.
Yeah, only if they plan on bringing spiders over.
Life expectancy goes up.
When you go to Australia?
No, when you're coming from Australia.
You've seen the spiders they have there. I don't blame them for wanting to come here.
You know, we're no.
Yeah. Australia is the only Australia is the only country where I say an M1 flamethrower should be legal to own.
Well, where there are orb spiders, yeah, that we'll later.
Funnel web, very different.
I don't. I'd take them all out.
Here's the funny part. Here's the sad part. The thing is that these warnings are not. To me, they're not something where it's an overreaction, because if you look at the United States from outside point of view, in countries where maybe they have more gun control or high restrictions on firearms, like, if you're coming from Japan and come to the U.S., or you're in Australia where there's no guns are allowed, and you come to the U.S. and now you see everybody, you go into an area where maybe they have open carry, or you've gone into an area where there's a lot of card-carrying members of the NRA. It can be kind of creepy from that perspective. And then you watch the news of all these shootings, and you're surrounded by these people with guns. Yeah, you might reconsider your travel plans. And I wouldn't blame a one of them. I really wouldn't.
Nope. Especially considering I actually looked it up. Here in the U.S., we have had eight mass shootings with double-digit injuries and or deaths this year. So, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
I
Yeah, you
apologize
finish.
for. I was just going to say I apologize for sidetracking us there for a moment, but it was just something I felt I had to say. I mean, we've discussed my AR-15, why I got it, and why I got rid of it. So
Yeah, but we also know full well you're a vet. You know how these things operate and how to operate them, and you have a much more a much more vested opinion, informed opinion. Sorry, than what I do.
that, and I had very different reasons for getting it compared to, say, the gentleman you were speaking with. I would assume.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but that's
See,
a
to
whole
me,
other
an
thing.
AR-15 in the hands of military is like putting a scalpel in a surgeon's hand. It's also the same as putting a scalpel in a child's hand when you give it to a civilian.
You clearly overestimate the marksmanship of many, many, many service members.
Probably. I mean, my grandfather was a marksman. So was my grandmother.
As To the Ranting Griffin once said, "This is America. We're like toddlers with an RPG and a crack habit."
Yeah,
You know,
Nintendo. No, I can't blame Nintendo. I
No.
have not shot anybody.
no. If you're gonna blame anything, blame Doom, but that's a whole other thing for later. So
I blame that
235
damn dog.
235 on the docket, Your Honor. And like I said, the only way I can say it is the same way that was running through my head when I was writing up the title. Poppies. Poppies will make them sleepy. I'm sorry. I couldn't
Dear
help it.
God.
I know. But as soon as I wrote it, that was what was going through my head. And it was just like, fine. You know what? Fine. You're welcome. Look at the bright side. It's not the great and powerful Oz, with DeFranco. So don't even worry about it. Dalan, don't you even try to fix that. It's not gonna be able to do that. You're not gonna be able to do anything with that.
fix it. I'm considering amping that bitch up.
More echo.
Remember that for later.
That's
All I got to
the
do is just
combo.
I just got to turn the knob all the way up. I only went to about. I think I only went to about the 6 point.
But
Yeah, that was about 6.
This one goes to 11.
Yeah, well, if I wanted to go ahead to 11, I could just talk. Do you remember, Eddie? Do you remember when I dropped the piano on you, brother? I talked just like this. I'm not going to do that.
No.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say you're not squeezing your junk nearly enough to get the octave you need.
No, I'm not. So,
Speaking of 11.
yes. Speaking of 11,
Yes.
it is currently here, UTC and now on the eastern seaboard of the Americas. It is the 11th day of the 11th month. It is what is otherwise known as Armistice Day. For some, it's Remembrance. For some, it's Veterans. It all comes as the... Oh, shit, it's going to be one of those nights. Okay.
Yeah, don't feel bad.
Well, there's a couple of reasons why. It is marking the end of World War I. The war to end all wars. And it didn't. Not by a long shot. I'm sorry. You guys know full well I try really, really, really hard most of the time to be able to keep myself and compose myself and conduct myself and
Why are you getting worked up?
not too long ago I watched a clip from the TV series MASH. And what had happened was that throughout the episode, Colonel Potter was very irritable, very unhappy, and everybody in the camp thought there was something wrong with him. So he finally brought all the senior officers over to his tent, and he was wearing his old cavalry First World War uniform. Didn't exactly fit the way that it used to in his youth, but whatever. It's 40 years later. What are you going to do? He had gotten word that the last of the 5 friends that he was part of had died in Japan, I believe it was. And he was the last of the 5 friends who had holed up in a farmhouse, I believe it was, in France. And they found a whole bunch of beautiful booze. I forget exactly what it was. And when they got to the last bottle, they basically said, "Okay, look, we'll just not drink this last bottle, and we'll just save it. And whichever of us is the last."
I think it was Chateau Cheval Blanc.
It might have been.
Okay, but he was there. He was at World War I.
He was.
Yeah, so he had a good reason to get worked up.
But he was, Colonel Potter was the last of his 5 friends. And he shared a drink with the senior staff and then toasted his new friends. And what's got me worked up about it is realizing that the setting for MASH was the Korean War. So this was the mid-50s. He had spent upwards of 40 years where this one bottle and his friends were out there. And he was marking the end of a group of friends. And was specifically lamenting the fact that the first one should have been, by rights, by need, by hope, the war to end all wars, or at the very least all world wars, and we know full well it wasn't even close. And what hurts to me is that it was an immense loss of life for the First World War, including, unfortunately, a lot of animals, cavalry, because, I mean, they, the horses didn't know any better. They were just out there doing what they were told to do. And then, years later, we have World War II, with new horrors inflicted on humanity in the form of poison gases and machine guns and tanks and flamethrowers and V1 bombs and genocide and human testing, experimentation. Years later, we end up with, as Joey likes to point out, crunchy gasoline, the Agent Orange, and Cold Wars, and walls, and demilitarized zones, and people trying to escape from one side to another, shot dead on barbed wire fencings.
World War, for me, World War One. Well, there's 2 world wars. I mean, they're so massive and complex. It goes beyond it. It's even hard to talk about. I mean, it's beyond the scale of the individual human.
We refer to them as world wars, not because the entirety of the world was at war, but because of the effect that it had on the entirety of the world. For example, Argentina never fired a shot at Germany, but if it weren't for Argentina providing food and material to the people of Britain, Britain wouldn't have survived the war.
Actually, I have a couple of articles related, or not related, but of a similar vein that I pulled up in advance of the show. But one thing, if I remember correctly, I believe World War I was the war that chemical weaponry, mustard gas, ran rampant.
With reference to Shujin's statement earlier, honestly, with the exception of the V1 bomb, all those things were present in World War One.
Yeah. Then there was the okay, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not entirely up on my military history, but did that not spawn the Geneva Convention?
I believe so.
Which was basically saying, guess what, guys? We have discovered weapons that we use on each other that are too evil. Now, when you think about modern warfare and what it's turned into these days, war is no longer a gentleman's game.
No. It's not.
Now, that's not to say that it was before, but if you look at, the like medieval battles, there was a sense of, yes, I'm going to war with this place, but there is a sense of decorum. There is a sense of honor.
Rules.
Yeah. Which to me kind of conflicts with the whole idea of war, which is, let's face it, war is hell.
No, hell is hell.
No, just follow me on this, Tech.
Smash.
I know.
It is the absence of reason, of decency, of anything that makes us as humanity that which is greater than the sum of our parts. War is an expression of our basest instinct to fear and destroy that which is different, to protect or to strike out in the name of our respective tribes.
But I have to stop you there because, it's like religion where you're gonna have to separate that into two levels. You've got people who start the wars, and then you got the people that are fighting in them.
You're right.
And the people who start the wars, they start them for reasons completely different than what they tell their people.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the people in the war is concerned, I think they're more concerned about their immediate surroundings, about their brothers in arms, and getting the fuck out of this whatever situation they were put in by those who make the decisions.
No, you're right. You're right.
It's hard to generalize for that kind of thing.
Yeah, but
I mean, if we're going to talk about it into any constructive end, I really think we have to analyze it. You have to talk about it, about who did what.
But I just, despite that, the weapons that are at the soldiers' disposal, they are designed to inflict pain, harm, intimidation, fear. Whether you're a soldier just claiming you're following orders as you are torching places or killing people, or whether you are a general, who fights the war behind the lines, to borrow a song lyric. In my opinion, the act of war does not bring out the best in humanity. Now that's a very, I know it is a very broad
of all understatements.
Well, no, I now strike that, because I've also heard stories of soldiers protecting families, sheltering them from what would otherwise be, a senseless execution or something. Go ahead. Sorry, Shuj.
Yeah, no. That's okay. The two things, and partly to kind of dovetail off of that. Stephanie was also saying, by the way, sorry, Dalan, the rules of war did not apply anywhere at any time. Chivalry was for the rich chevalier only. And I sincerely hope my pronunciation is accurate, because I'm just reading it off the top of my head.
I have no lessons to give there.
Chevalier, I believe.
Chevalier, I could
Cavalier would be, Cavalier would be, I think, the translation.
Okay. All right. What I was going to say was, as far as to the rules of war, where there are certain things you did not do. There's one example that I can say that once upon a time, and I believe I can go back to World War II on this one in particular, you did not fire upon the Red Cross. If there was a group with a banner with a Red Cross on it where they were going out into the field to retrieve people who were wounded, it was an unwritten rule. You did not fire on them because they're medics, they're non-combatants. You just did not. Period. You just end of story. You just didn't do it. Why? They're other soldiers. No. They're doctors. They're corpsmen. They're not shooting. They're non-combatants. You leave them the hell alone because we don't want them shooting our doctors and non-combatants.
Well,
for exactly the same reason.
And then there's also the concept of neutrality on the part of nations during the big conflicts. Switzerland was considered neutral during World War II because it does not border on water. Therefore, it is an enclosed country. I'm not entirely sure of the reasoning behind it. However, the country of Sweden was also deemed neutral by conventions of war in World War II. Now, some information that came to light in the 1980s may have shown them saying, yes, we're neutral, but that doesn't mean we like you. And this was one of the documents I pulled up prior to coming here. Refugees from Norway that was occupied by the Germans from 1940 to 1945. Many of them found themselves in Sweden. And the Germans were under the impression that they were there for police training so that these people would come back and be local constables for certain towns and cities to keep the jackboots protected. That was not the case. Sweden was arming and training the underground resistance to go back into Norway and be an absolute thorn in the side of the occupying Nazi forces. And this is why I get a little worked up, Joseph, so you'll please forgive me.
No, don't worry.
No,
I'm not criticizing. I'm just asking why. What's your personal?
Precisely. Personal. I am one step away. I am 1 degree of separation from World War II. My father was one of those people who fought. And over the years, I watched. If he had some kind of PTSD, he never really showed it. But I learned more about the war stories that he was involved in after he died because he told it to the rest of his family, like to my other siblings. But when it came to me, I never really heard some of the more gruesome details until afterwards. And it's really interesting these days when you see people throwing that N-word around as freely as they throw other insults. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to take my one here. You're going to use that word? Trust me. You have no fucking clue what a real one looks like because you've not seen one. If you had seen one, chances are you would be curled up in the fetal position in the corner of the room, crying your eyes out for the rest of your life, begging for some kind of drug to take the pain away.
In my case, my grandfather on my mother's side was U.S. Navy Pacific Supply Fleet. The only ship that I remember he was on was I forget if it was the USS Bear. So he never talked about his time in the military at all. I have no idea what kind of
Again,
firefighting or anything, but
yeah, I didn't hear much of the details, and nobody in my family's told me much. It just, how he got into it, I didn't know until actually the day of his funeral. I was told that when they came to his town, I guess the head of the Gestapo publicly beat him. And he was underage at the time. So just give me a second here. Okay, so 1940 is when they came. He was 45 when he had me. 71. Sorry, I'm trying to get some context here. But from what I was told, he lied about his age and got into the underground. Now, the Norwegian military officially, Norway officially surrendered 2 months after the invasion. And apparently they lasted the longest out of any holdout nation that tried to oppose them. They lasted 2 months. That gives you an idea of just exactly how powerful the Nazi war machine was back then. My dad told me stories of the Battle of Narvik, a harbor town. I think that's where the Bismarck came out of. Right before, yeah, yeah. By the way, Norwegian spotters helped with the sinking of that particular boat. So, claims to fame, whatever. But needless to say, yeah, after 2 months, they surrendered, and that's when the underground took over. And they started just pissing off the Germans. And they kept pissing them off right up to 1945 when they left.
Yeah, there's a piece of this that Stephanie has got me at, and letting me know that sorry, Shujin, that is more mythology. The thou shalt not fire on the Red Cross. And I wanted to ask because one way or another, it may not be completely accurate to it all, but I figured I'd ask Joey. Best of your recollection from your training, do you recall if there was ever an official "thou shalt not fire on," medical Red Cross kind of folks in a?
I believe what Stephanie is approaching is not the sort of war that you would have experienced, say, in World War I or World War II, but rather the quote-unquote modern war or total warfare that we currently experience, where if there is a wounded man, the shooter will wait until the medic comes out and then shoot the medic and then shoot whoever comes to help the medic and then shoot whoever comes to help that guy, and so on and so forth.
Like I said before, war does not bring out the best of humanity.
No. And that's why I'm asking. I mean, was there ever a thing that said you are not to? Or
for us, yes. In particular, a Red Cross or a Red Crescent.
Mm-hmm. And this was basically rule of engagement as far as was concerned for you guys.
Yes.
Yeah. And as far as to the age of gentleman soldier, the only thing that really comes to mind for me was the World War I flying aces, where you went up there, and if you were extremely lucky, you had a machine gun on the front of your canopy, and it didn't shoot out your propeller.
Yeah, you had a good timing chain at that point.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But
funny. Manfred von Richthofen.
Yes, the Red Baron.
Yes, better known as Red Baron. Famous for not only his efficiency in a fighter aircraft, but also his decorum. There was a point at which he forced a British plane to land, and he had he had decided to land alongside them. Now they landed, even though their engine was destroyed. He attempted to land and flipped his plane.
Which I'm sure his brother gave him no end of grief about. Yes, he had a brother, by the way.
I'd be willing to bet that even with a burned out engine, something like that would be tough to do.
After which he dismounted and approached the two Englishmen who had been in their plane, and they had a rather civil discussion before parting ways.
Now, was this a white furred and a yellow feathered couple, or am I thinking of the wrong group?
Not off the top of my head, but when Manfred von Richthofen was eventually killed, it was over enemy lines. He was recovered by French and British forces, who then buried him with full military honors. And even after the people, I want to say Villers Bocage, they had desecrated the grave on numerous occasions until the commander of that particular area said, "Cut that shit out."
You know, it's funny that oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the acts, all these stories of chivalry and empathy and all that, it comes down to the individual at the individual level, at the soldier scale of things. But these motherfuckers organizing the wars, imagine if they had morals, they have to have a complete. What I'm saying is, there's, on the soldier level, there's empathy, there's all the human emotions that we can share, and these are the stories that make it out of the war to us. But at the top of the level that we never hear about, I mean, in order to organize that kind of death and pain and destruction on like hundreds of thousands, even millions of humans, it involves dehumanization.
Yeah.
A total lack of morals.
Yeah. There is there would be decidedly a different take on overall warfare if those that were the ones making the ultimate decisions, the highest level decisions, had skin in the game, as the expression goes. If they had real pain that they would have to endure, I could guarantee things would go surprisingly differently by comparison.
I think there's something that goes along the lines of there'd be a lot less wars if those who were quick to start them were the first in line.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
There's something along that lines.
Well, that's these guys are like, they're completely in their, it's again society on two different levels. You've got the people in the upper part of it. They're in the little bubble, and like, yeah, well, we down here would like to give them a wake up call from time to time.
I mean, if the world
it never comes, if they're at their command center sending people out to war and all that, they don't have to.
And for people who say, oh, the leaders aren't in a bubble, it's such and such country that's causing the problem, or such and such group that's causing the problem. It's like, if you don't believe that world leaders are in a bubble, then go on Twitter and see what Donald Trump had to say about the California fires.
Oh God, I saw that earlier tonight, and I was just
And now think about this for a moment. He's schmoozing up with Kim Jong-un and Putin and other people who are notorious for causing conflict and dividing people rather than unifying them, which historically has bode horribly for populations in general, usually leading to conflict, downright wars, that sort of thing. And tell me that they're not in a bubble.
I would like to see Donald Trump flip burgers for one day.
There are a lot of people.
You would stand there and blame the utensils and the grill and the burger patties themselves and the people who provided the patties and management and the company's policies and the customers. He would never flip a single patty, dude.
No. And
you wouldn't get that.
To that end, there are a lot of people that we would really like to see have more diversified scope. I'm stumbling a little bit over my terminology, but I hope I'm kind of getting the point across.
Yeah, what does that mean, diversified scope?
Okay. By example, the whole reason why I have the collection of people on here is not just because some folks have asked, but because we all have very different backgrounds, expectations, perceptions, and understandings of many different topics. As no matter what the topic is, we all see things from a very different way. In your particular Joseph, you were Canadian. You are
Still
Canadian, right? But your primary residence is in Europe. So you have the perspective of having been brought up with the culture of Ontario.
Yeah, but I have no idea what somebody from Europe thinks like. I only know my own mind. But I can say that it influences me, sure.
Yes, exactly. Now, do you know all of what goes on across Europe? Of course not. No. But you have what you see around you, the news, the people that you interact with, how coffee prices are this week. You get the idea. But I mean, you have information across both continents and for both cultures that are quite a bit different from each other.
Well, it gives a wider perspective, if that's what you're saying.
Exactly. Okay. Joseph, you've got that. Joey was a vet. He's still young. He's been dead. He got better. UnrenownedTech has worked in the tech industry. He's from New York, Jersey.
This is exactly why I ask people to elaborate.
I'm not from Jersey.
About
Shut
well,
up.
That's what all people from Jersey say.
And with good reason.
Just because I have traveled through Jersey does not mean that I became one of them.
Again, details. But the point that I'm trying to get to, though, is that if these people who were 20 plus years in government got the hell out and actually were not wearing tailored suits and got out and saw what it was like for everybody else, out in the suburbs, and just kind of make things, they would have a very different opinion as to what everything is around them.
That's what a bubble is, though, because these guys, they don't have to. They've got, their environment set up in a way that they're taken care of. So, they don't even feel a motivation to.
Yeah. Now let me explain one of the reasons why this.
They might not even be able to even conceive of going outside of their bubble.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You nailed this one straight on the head. I forget who the gentleman was, but there was a spy from Britain who went to France ahead of the invasion of Germany, World War II, intentionally got himself caught so that he could infiltrate in and see what was going on with these camps, these prisoner camps, and helped to organize resistance in there. Got the information about the extermination camps, like Auschwitz, which was only one of who only knows how the hell many. I don't remember. But he found out. And he brought these hellacious numbers with him as he got smuggled out of the country back to Great Britain, who took his information and said, no, that's not possible. They wouldn't be doing that. No, you're crazy. That's absolutely impossible. When he was reporting on the millions of people being killed by the Germans, and he was absolutely right, and they simply could not conceive that this guy's information was accurate. Simply could not conceive of it because it was so beyond the pale. And this was a guy that was intentionally sent in for the job of coming back with this information. And fortunately, he did. And it was so horrific, nobody would believe him. And that's the thing about warfare that hurts the most. And we find out time and time and time again that the imagination of humanity to inflict more hurt on the humanity is sometimes horrifically bottomless.
Yeah.
If I may.
Be my guest.
Speaking from a perspective that more than just, a veteran or so could comment on, I would say it's safe to say that at some point, the majority, at least, of this panel has seen the film Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
There is a part early in the film after they have deployed the Bangalore mines and blown away the obstructions leading up from the beach, where a couple of American soldiers are approached by two German soldiers who have their hands raised and are shouting and are summarily gunned down. Those soldiers were not speaking German. They were speaking Czech. They were Osttruppen, or East troops, from occupied Czechoslovakia that had been pressed into service with the German army. Roughly, what the translation of what they were saying was, I'm Czech, I never killed anybody.
But they didn't have anybody that spoke Czech, so they had no way of knowing.
Just saying that atrocity is synonymous with warfare, regardless of what side you're on.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Now, there is a similar story to that of von Richthofen that comes from World War II, which a lot of people do not consider
World War I.5.
Well, they don't consider it to be as quote unquote mannered as World War I. That is to say, individuals who are following the old conventions of warfare, the romantic conventions of warfare.
The gentlemanly ones, shall we say?
However, there is one individual that I would like to bring up. Oberleutnant Franz Stigler. Have you ever heard that name before?
Doesn't ring a bell for me.
It does ring a bell.
It's familiar, but I can't remember.
Franz Stigler was a German fighter pilot in World War II. On December 20th, 1943, he observed an American bomber, a B-17 by the nickname Ye Old Pub, piloted by one Charles Brown.
Oh, I think I remember this one now.
Returning from a bombing raid. It had lost 2 of its engines. The nose of the plane had been blown completely off. Several of the crew were dead or heavily injured. And of its I can't remember the exact number. I want to say 12 or so machine guns. Only 2 were operational. The only reason why this bomber had managed to escape the initial group of fighters that had been tailing it was because the oxygen reserve on board had been hit and the crew passed out. And the only reason why they started spinning down toward the ground, so they assumed it was a dead plane. The only reason why they were able to pull out of it was because Captain Brown managed to regain consciousness early enough to be able to pull up. Stigler saw the plane proceeding toward Britain from a different airfield and took off. He was a few points away from earning a Knight's Cross. And a bomber, which I believe counted as 3 points at the time, would have earned him a Knight's Cross. When he pulled up alongside the plane and observed the tail gunner the tail gunner's body hunched over his machine guns and observed the state of the plane, the only thing that came to his mind was his commanding officer's words. His commanding officer, who had also served in World War I. And the words were something similar to the case of, if I ever see you shoot a man in a parachute, I will shoot you myself. To Stigler, that was not a bomber. That was a parachute. He tried to force the plane down to land within German lines to allow the crew to serve the remainder of the war as POWs. They would not. He tried to redirect them to Sweden. They would not. And so, flying just hundreds of meters in the air, he flew in formation with the bomber all the way to the channel, so that German guns would not fire on it because he was in formation with it, and then allowed the bomber to continue on its way and return to base.
There are stories where humanity still ekes out a living, even in the middle of warfare, man.
But it always does, in every occasion. And again, I don't want to, like, this is, I always see the same thing repeating. I mean, like, at every, out of war, out of, every story we tell has to do with our dealing with other humans. It's always, this is what strikes us most. This is what we empathize with. But when we talk about things like world wars and things like that, I'd like to see the conversation less about that. We have that already. That's ours, that empathy, and talk more about, who starts the wars.
Mm.
I mean, it's almost like distracting from that.
Well, there are
Because
those. Oh, go ahead.
no, oh, lost my thought now. Wait. No, but it's like we have to think about the bigger picture. As individuals. We have to think about the bigger picture, and very few are. I mean, because just like look at the elections just now. Like, are we learning anything from history? No, we're just still thinking about our immediate surroundings, and that's exactly why even the midterms didn't turn out as well as we. Nobody's learning anything from. Not only are they not thinking about the bigger picture, they're not learning a thing from history.
Well, that part I don't know is necessarily entirely accurate. I don't know that it's entirely wrong either.
As
If
individuals, maybe we learned from history, but the guys upstairs, well, whatever. We're not questioning them. That's basically what it comes down to. We
Well-
should put them in face of history. We should hold them accountable.
well, there's one thing that's kind of come out. The midterms right now, we have seen a number of races that were otherwise seemingly done, only to find out, hey, you know what? We've still got stuff that we have to count by hand yet. So race isn't over just yet. Fat Lady hadn't sung yet, only to find out that, oh, well, this was going to be going to a Republican, and they were up by several thousand votes, and well, now it's swung all the way the other way. And the reason why I'm kind of using this is that one of the things that ended up coming up was the presidential election, the federal elections here in the U.S. in 2000, where Florida was the big problem child with the recount having to go on, and
You're talking about something completely different
No,
from
no,
my
no,
point.
hold on. I think I am still on point for it. So hold on a second. Back at that time, the infamous term was the hanging Chad. I'm bringing that up so that people kind of remember the reference to it all, in because that was a big famous piece of it all. And that all came down to finally a court case to finally decide who ended up being president of the United States by declaring, okay, this is the winner. By court case, not by the number of votes. Fast forward to this past week's elections, we now have votes that are, some have said, okay, it's done, but then other groups are saying, well, no, wait a second, we haven't finished counting everything yet. Let's not have what happened in Florida in 2000 happen again here. Let's make sure that we actually have every vote counted and make sure that every stone is turned and every closet and checked and every box is actually gone through and collated and everything is right. There are groups who have actually learned from that mistake, that debacle at the turn of the century, and have said, let's not let that happen again.
But apparently Florida hasn't.
But my point was about questioning authority. I mean, there's not, like, with a less than 50% voter turnout, there's not much outrage out there.
Admittedly, yes, that is a perennial problem that seems to be getting a little bit better. The turnout this year was not 50%, but at the same point, it was. Wait, I don't remember I don't remember the number of overall turnout. I'm just remembering that the younger voter turnout was still under 50%, but it was 10 points higher than the previous. Something like that. It was a significant jump. My point. But yeah, here in the US, there is the problem of exactly that. And you're right, there is not nearly enough outrage for people to actually go out there and do their thing. But the problem is we've got that whole, well, you can't force me to do because you're interfering with my First Amendment right, which says that I can use my voice or not, and you're not allowed to force me to say something, which is...
And I met somebody like that.
Yeah.
I met somebody right the day of elections. After I had already gone to vote, I had stopped for fuel. Person saw the I voted sticker. I said, "Yeah, I don't vote." I said, "Are you not allowed to vote?" Like, "No, I don't vote because I want my voice to be heard." I said, "When you don't vote, you're not sending a message and you're not using your voice." "Well, yeah, I am because I'm not voting. Therefore, it's one less vote. And if they want me to vote, they're going to do better." No, that's not how it works. What happens is when you don't vote, you don't exist to them.
Yeah, they don't care.
Because not voting for them is as good as you not voting for their opponent. They may not get your vote, but they've got the supporters they know will vote for them. So you're potentially one less opposition to them. And if if you don't like any of the candidates, write in your own candidates, people you think would be good. Nominate somebody. You get the option to do that.
There was one that
but it was like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, there was one that was listed on my ballot where only one person was up for a particular post, and little one came in with me because I waited until he was free from everything for the day, and we did it together. We still missed the mechanical machines, but anyway, and we're discussing how this stuff works on the ballot, and he's just like, "Well, there's only one person." I'm like, "Yeah, sometimes it happens." And he's like, "Well, why don't you write yourself in?" I thought about that, and I was like, "You know what? My actual legal name does not fit in that box."
I think,
and he actually looked at me with this. But if you write it small enough, it would, right? Dude, you've seen how I write. All right, yeah, there's that.
So it's a story about missing his point.
I think the point that Joseph was trying to get at was, to quote Pindar, and I am not going to attempt the Greek, I'm sorry. But
it's all Greek to me.
War is sweet to those who have no experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a kid playing toy soldiers. Probably.
Well, a good example would be, everybody blames Hitler for World War II. But here's something you need to keep in mind. Even if Hitler had never come to power, do you realize how many German politicians of the time could have just as easily become the next Hitler?
He was put into power because he was saying, quote unquote, the right things.
He had the charisma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Trump.
And they actually wanted to use him. The leftovers from World War I wanted to use him to get back into a position where they could rise again.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
No, but the guys who originally wanted to use them ended up getting bumped off after the Reichstag fire. Everybody using each other. So it's a little more complex than Hitler bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, is just that there are such a large number of individuals who could have just as easily filled his shoes. And we like to demonize Hitler and make him a monster because...
Well, he was.
Indeed, he was, but that's the thing. We prefer to look at him that way rather than as a human being, because then that would be us admitting that any human could have done it. And let's face it, they could have.
it's we can't even begin to look at like everything that led up to whatever he did. But all we can do is look at what he did and then make conclusions from that. I mean,
there have been several times where I've heard World War II referred to as the inevitable war.
I'd like to hear more about that.
Simply because of the situation that was created by the end of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles.
Well, yeah, because but it's still, I understand how Germany was humiliated, really, and they were still paying their debt. It's the Treaty of Versailles, I think.
Yeah.
The debt would have gone beyond one generation after the war. I mean, they basically everybody who's in the war, their children would be paying the German debt. So, it's one thing to defeat your enemy, and it's another thing to, strip them, tar and feather them.
Yeah, and it goes even beyond.
If the punishment isn't appropriate, well, the criminal tends to forget about their crime and think more about the punishment.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different angles to this, but anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say it even goes beyond the political and economic. I mean, paying restitution, okay. Getting forced back into your own borders again, okay. Being humiliated on the world stage that you were beat by all these other groups in this giant barroom brawl that was World War I. Okay. Hyperinflation happening. Okay. Leave that all on its own platter for a second. You've still got the civil problem, the societal problem, where...
And not to mention the international problem as a whole, because what did the League of Nations do? More or less set up the same kind of no-win situation that the original European League had set up prior to World War I.
And society, like I said, the Jews were the ones who made everything bad because that's what was prevalent thing. Or it was the Gypsies, or it was the League of Nations putting them down. Or it was...
Joe, don't overreact. He's just saying what was commonly said back then.
Yes,
not what was true.
Okay, but you have to make that clear.
Well, I was trying to get to that. That all of these things were the prevalent at the time attitudes. Incorrect that they were, but popular enough to make society distrust one another and hate onto one group or other.
And now we're getting into an entire another dynamic survived by imitation society. You've got one level of the population who rely on their authority figures for fucking survival. They'll believe anything they say. I mean, this kind of thing requires that mentality. It can't exist without it. I mean, what rational person wants the shit of somebody else in another country?
Yeah, and it comes from two different standpoints as well. I mean, on the one hand, you have what you could refer to as the puppet masters, and then you have societal expectations. Let's not forget Horace here. Dulce decorum est pro patria mori,
which translates as...
Well, in Horace's
love of
intended, in Horace's intended message, it is a sweet and honorable thing to die for one's country.
I think I would much prefer Captain Picard's. If the reason be just, they are willing to lay down their lives.
In both of those, you have to, if the reason be just, you'd have to define just, and you'd also have to define country.
Yeah, I think the last time where we can say that there was a very straightforward just World War II, Jewish Holocaust. I think that is arguably the last time that we can say as a whole, as a species, yeah, that was wrong. That was simply absolutely wrong. And that needed to be stopped by any means necessary.
Though you know, there are those who would say that it had little to do with it in comparison to any other number of reasons. I mean, there are those who still say, you know, Britain was like, thank God for Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see the Jewish question addressed more. And, in all the discussions I hear about it, I mean, you have to look at the situation. Any situation, you have to look at it completely to understand it. Hitler, what did he want? He wanted, total domination. He wanted a non-critically thinking population. And basically, his camps were filled with people who were non-conformists, people who questioned. And the Jewish religion is one of the few, at least in recent history, I think post-conformism, that's not the word, there was kind of an enlightenment in the 19th century Jewish, when the religion anyways, where people became less orthodox. But anyways, the Jewish people were one of few who did not condemn critical thought, like Christian-dominated nations did, and other totalitarian states did. So, anyways, that's why they were hated. So the leaders hated them for that reason because they questioned the system and they wouldn't conform. So they were put in the camps with the rest, with the gypsies and, even the gays, another form of nonconformist.
Well,
but we never look at it through that context. We always say, well, they hated the Jews. Hating Jews is bad, but that doesn't teach us anything.
Okay.
It's bad. It's obviously unequivocally. Of course, it's bad.
Oh,
but,
yes.
I mean, it deserves more. It deserves more examination. It deserves more. Like, why them?
Yeah. And Stephanie was just saying, people did not know about the Holocaust until the camps were overrun. I disagree. I need the British spy that I was referring to. I need to find his.
The largest part of the population did not know, and it was purposely put that way, just not to bother people who are conforming. And was it MacArthur who, after the Second World War, he made German locals go and help clean up the bodies?
I think so, Joey. I think that is correct, wasn't it?
I'm not.
I'm sorry, what?
Joseph was just saying that wasn't it MacArthur who had the German people, locals, to the camps actually go in to help clean up the bodies and such? I vaguely remember that. Do you have any recollection?
MacArthur was in the Pacific.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm wrong about that. Was it one of the?
Let me check.
Okay, and while you're looking that up, Stephanie, like I said, the German spy the British spy that I was referring to earlier. I will go ahead and I will have to look his information up again, but I am fairly certain he had actually smuggled out information about the concentration camps, and that was where he got back, and British intel basically said, "You're out of your fucking mind. Nobody would be doing something like that. Get the hell out of my office." Again, I may be misremembering it, but I think I've got it right. I will look it up. I will find this guy, and I will put it in the show notes to link to it one way or the other, whichever one it is that I'm thinking of to say yes or no.
You're right. I I think you're right. It's that it's still to be confirmed because I have no evidence for this myself, but it's to be checked. But I'm pretty sure that the camps weren't a widely known thing until towards the middle end of the war.
Yeah, by the general populace, perhaps, but at the very least, by like I said, British intel would have at the very least known. And like I said, if I'm remembering it correctly, they dismissed it out of hand because who in the fuck would ever do something like that? Yeah, I know. We've blown our PGR rating. Fuck, I don't care. It's Deadpool 2.
How many times in history have they done that? I mean, what's it? Block here. The Inquisition was the same thing. It was just to drive to basically eliminate all nonconformists. I mean, anybody who questioned, or even anybody who thought.
Well, shit. Let's be fair. I mean, shit, the Catholic Church excommunicates people for exactly that reason. The Mormon Church will. Oh shit. The Jehovah's Dalan, the Jehovah's Witnesses. What the hell is the shunning? Yeah. And you're just out. I mean, every organization has got their thing, and when it's a near cult like a religion, you're cut off. Theoretically, you're cut off from everything, from your family to your friends to your job.
Well,
for exactly that reason.
And that's just that if you look at it through the religious lens, okay. So you had the Inquisition, you had, so many other the Salem witch trials on a much smaller scale.
My point being is that there is no difference.
No, you're right.
What Hitler wanted, and there's no lens. It's exactly the same thing.
You're right. The only difference is the perception of us in the West who talk about it, because we look at the Nazi, we look at the concentration camps, we look at Auschwitz and Dachau and all those other ones, and we are horrified at man's inhumanity to man. But how many people, when they first heard of the scale and the atrocities, how many of those good God-fearing Christian people grabbed the cross around their neck as if, God was going to shield their eyes from the horror, not realizing guys like Torquemada or some of the popes that I've read about in, like I said, I've been doing some reading up on the Freemasons. And not so much the Masons themselves, but some of the tortures and execution styles that are outlined in the book that were perpetrated by the church.
But they don't even read their own Bible.
I know, but I'm saying these atrocities would make Heinrich Himmler look at it and go, you guys are fucked up.
Yeah. Some of the invention that went into those devices.
Oh, I know. We can't cure cancer. But my God, can we find how many different ways to make a human scream?
Yeah. Joey, I know that you got your thing. Go ahead.
It was General Eisenhower. And
yes, thank you.
After he had witnessed conditions at Buchenwald, he put out an order that every soldier not at the immediate front tour the camps in order to observe firsthand what had been inflicted on not only the Jews but the other prisoners.
Yeah, I'm going to use that as the final turn as we're getting to the end of the whole damn thing. We've heard this day referred to typically, quote unquote, officially as Armistice Day because it was the signing of the Armistice. And I know it was not the end of the war exactly. It was officially the conclusion.
It was the end of hostilities.
And again, officially so. Behind the scenes, like we've been talking about, things...
The Treaty of Versailles would not be signed for some time yet.
Right. And even after that, we know full well there was stuff bubbling under the hood up through, into World War II and maybe even beyond that, but that's a whole other thing. But for the Allies, it's Armistice Day. It's Veterans Day. It's Memorial Day. It's Remembrance Day. Whatever terminology they want to use for it. But in Germany, it's not it does not have the same gravitas. It is a national day of mourning, of reflection, of thinking back on it and knowing what happened and knowing that it should not happen again. And it's a form of personal shame on the part of the country as a whole to basically say, yeah, this shouldn't be happening again. This should not. And I have some amount of confidence that Germany, for the easily foreseeable future, would not be the antagonist of another such campaign because of that. Because culturally, the German people now, culturally, admittedly, there are very few that were part of hostilities back from World War II. Even, I mean, World War I is almost a done, if I remember right, completely. But as a people, they know a vast majority of what happened and what it caused, the cost of it all, and have decided, nah, man, no, not again. This should not happen again. And that is a level of humility that very few countries societally seem to have. Germany and Japan both were beaten down as part of the war. Admittedly, Italy was too, but you don't really talk about Italy very much, if ever.
Well, that's because Italy, when they realized that the Germans were being pushed back and the population themselves were just absolutely sick of the war, they overthrew Mussolini.
Oh, look what they did to him.
And
they let their grievance be known in the streets.
Yeah, and after that point, Italy was in full support of the Allies. So,
yeah,
and you know it's interesting too because fascism, the philosophy that has become so synonymous with the Nazi side, I believe was actually coined by old Benito there.
Mm-hmm.
So it started there. Hitler went,
he put a name
I like
to
it. Yeah, I like this. I like this, and ran with it. But
Dalan, it's existed in 2,000 years of humanity. I mean, it's
no,
just
fair point.
different forms. I mean, you know, you've got the designated enemy, you've got the imaginary enemy, whatever. Just and you've got a non-questioning public. And really, it comes down to that. Like Germany, you brought up Germany. You know how they look at the First and Second World War is a huge difference between. I really think Germany has learned from their lessons, but only because they hold their leaders accountable.
Yeah. Now,
I think Germany is more of a democracy today than the U.S. is, because its people are. They have a sense of civil duty. They don't feel, they don't depend. They hold their leaders accountable instead of just depending on them blindly.
Yeah, to be fair, the German people have always had a sense of civil duty. Even going back into medieval times, the
you're painting in very broad strokes.
I am. Now, to be fair, this sense of duty has not always been used for the best. And, you know, our two well-discussed examples being the clear and obvious example of that. But
do you know how many German clans there were? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
France is just one of them. The Angles, they're
Germania?
all trying to off each other.
Germania was not was used to refer to a region. It was not used to refer to a people. That's
It didn't
a bit of
exist
history
until
that-
the 19th century.
exactly. But John of Luxembourg, the King of Bohemia, to be fair, one of the later entries in the history of knights of medieval Europe. He had a banner, which is now in use by the Prince of Wales, and has been since, I want to say, the 14th century. He had a banner that read, "Ich dien," I serve. He chose that because he didn't care what nation a person was from or what their creed was. His only care was that he, living by the old chivalric code, was there to serve people.
Oh, but to serve, yeah. It's a huge difference between serving your masters and serving
The greater good.
I'm sorry, I get your point.
Yeah. As an aside, by the way, Stephanie was asking me, have you checked out German politics recently, Shujin? No. I will admit, no, I have not. However, from what I have come to understand, culturally speaking, of Germany as a people, there tends to be much more. How do I best put this? From what I've understood, there tends to be much more acceptance and again, I'm probably not wording this out correctly, but of basically blowing off the idea that Germany would do something like that again, because why would we need to? We don't need to. I don't know what the right terminology would be for something, an attitude of that description.
Belligerent.
And they know that this doesn't happen overnight. I mean, look at I can see I watch from over here the United States creeping towards a new, almost a totalitarian state of mind, not a totalitarian state. If I don't want to advertise for another podcast, but if you've listened to the latest Radio Lab, which is really good, it's about the state of democracy in the world. You should really give a listen to that to see where the U.S. is in comparison with other countries.
But you're right, Shujin. Throughout the better part of the last century, everyone has viewed Germany as a belligerent force. I mean, hell, I can't even remember which comedian it was that made the joke, but you know, they were talking prior to the Afghanistan invasion about how, you know, oh, the lead, you know, the world's coming into an end because the lead golfer is black, the lead rapper is white, and Germany doesn't want to go to war.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I put it to you, and as a matter of fact, I kind of put it to all of you to kind of think about, and not necessarily the panel to discuss because we're kind of coming up on the end of it all, but in seriousness, with the current climate, who would you be more worried going to war for war's sake these days? Germany or really any country affiliated, if not necessarily with, the EU versus the United States of America currently.
The United States is already doing it.
Yeah. I may be wrong on this one, but to the best of my knowledge currently, the United States does not have a formal declaration of war in any particular theater.
Yeah, but just how you describe something, just because you describe something in a certain way doesn't mean they're not doing it. I mean,
I know
slavery still exists. We just don't call it slavery anymore. That seems to work for most of the population, but these are the kind of things we should question. Like how many? Yeah, look at U.S. presidents in the world, and look at U.S. Business, like economics, commerce, countries where they have interests, and compare those to military bases and all that.
He's not entirely wrong about some of the stuff still being around, just being renamed. I mean, if you look at it, like debtor's prison became something that was illegal, but we actually have laws that say, hey, if you're a parent who's supposed to be paying child support, you're not paying child support, we're going to lock you up until you start paying child support. Wait, what? That's debtor's prison. It's just for one particular thing, but it's still debtor's prison.
Fortuna all over again.
See, my folks used to tell me something as a kid when I used to point out differences in people's attire. Because to me it was interesting, that, you had certain age groups dressing one way, other age groups dressing another. And it came from my mother. And she said, fashion is a pendulum. It will swing one way, and if you give it enough time, it will come right back again, and everything that is old will now be new. And then it'll do it again, and it'll just keep going back and forth. All the old stuff becomes new, and it just goes over and over and over again. And it doesn't...
by the propeller heads. Have a listen to that.
And it's not just fashion. It's politics. It's everything in your daily life. Things repeat.
Because our individual bubble only lasts so long. We die. And forget.
I don't know if I would call it forgetting, but I think there's a myopia. I've said this before, the myopia of the masses.
It's not my experience. That's all.
Well,
I mean, like, yeah, that's why I ask about your personal experience. Like, why, how does World War I affect you? Because you can't possibly know what it was like to be somebody there at the time.
You're absolutely right.
In the context and like being surrounded by propaganda and even like that. I mean, we can't even fathom that.
And that's why I personally have a huge problem when I hear people on the political left start screaming Nazi.
Yeah. It ruins it for... It ruins the real definition.
Yeah, it's just these kids, and I will say kids. I don't care if you are older than me, and you are just a talking head for your political side. If you're going to use that word against someone my age or younger, buddy, you better have photographs, videos, and a sworn statement saying that this guy is part of the I Love Adolf Hitler fan club. Otherwise, you, sir, madam, whatever, are out of line
with the same political power. But as far as these kids are concerned, it's like when they say Nazi, it's like howling. It's just like a noise that gets a reaction. It's nothing more than that.
I think of what was his name, M'Baku from the Jabari tribe in Black Panther. When what's his name, the CIA guy was trying to speak. And all they kept doing was ooh, 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 basically shouting him down. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
These guys are just howling it and screaming and saying, oh, this guy's a Nazi. He has Nazi ideologies. Prove it.
We could
show me where he wears the armband. Show me where he pledges allegiance to the ideology.
That kind of comparison.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And that's the whole problem, actually.
Exactly.
We could have a talk about this.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to, the scary thing about that is, it's like, if they want to continue to poke the stick at what has been thus far, I'd say a relatively nonviolent response, I would say in certain circles, what's going to happen when someone claims stand your ground? Let that sink in, folks. Because you keep screaming, you keep swinging, you keep yelling and falsely accusing people of this, or blowing it out of proportion. Someday, somebody is going to react. And
I think
on that day, I'd say break out the popcorn, because shit is going to burn.
Yeah, these kind of people, I think, tend to. I think they'll quell the name calling in situations where there's a real threat, because avoiding threats seems to be what these people are all about.
Well, all I'm saying is that they'll yell and scream all they want until they cross the one guy who's willing to.
Yeah, I see your point.
Who's not going to take it, and that's what I said. Stand your ground. That's a law in some U.S. states, where if someone comes onto your property and you perceive it as a threat and you own a gun, you can take them out and theoretically not face criminal charges. I believe that's the abridged version of the law.
Castle law.
Yeah. But I think in some states it's called stand your ground.
Yeah, it's a variation of the castle. We're getting pretty close and on to finishing up over here. Yeah. So let me go ahead and see if anybody's got anything else. And Stephanie, I'm going to be coming to your thing as part of my closing for you to kind of wrap that all together. So Dalan and Joseph, you guys have had a lot to discuss at the moment. So whatever it is that you guys are going to close with, I'm gonna hit you guys at the end. So want to try to keep it a little bit brief.
I have nothing to add, really.
Okay,
just thanks for having me on.
Shit, that makes that part easy. Okay,
yeah.
Tech. What last piece do you want to finish off on at this point?
We need to evolve as a species. We need to evolve a better sense, a better emotion, a more mature emotional level, so that we can handle the technology, the problems, the very. Come on, guys.
Joseph, give him the chance to say his piece. Please, just don't interrupt. Thank you.
The various things of our time that we're not mature enough to handle right now, that we've demonstrated that we're not mature enough. And it comes down to emotional maturity, logic and reasoning, and acknowledging that we each are unique, but we all have many things in common, and we need to treat each other more humanely. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people out there that don't care.
All right, before I go on over to Joey, Joseph, my apologies. I came off a little bit louder than I intended to. That was
supposed to be a background whisper, nothing more.
It was loud enough to be distracting to him. And
okay, sorry.
So
apologies, my apologies,
and mine for being a little louder than I anticipated. But sorry, Joey. Anything that you wanted to finalize out with?
There had been something that I'd recently been researching, and I wish I could remember his name at this point, but there was technically not a German king, because there was no Germany at the time, but among the various kingdoms that occupy modern day Germany, there was a king who I can only remember his nicknames. The father of the Landknechts or something of that sort, and the last of the knights. He was one of the individuals who who was a major proponent for the use of gunpowder in Europe, and which, of course, ended the Age of the Knights. But there was something that he did that stood out to me. During a time where they had been having a dispute with France, he posed the offer of dueling the King of France rather than have the two countries go to war. And for the life of me, I can't remember his name. But, you know, what a concept, eh?
There's something to be said for that. Dalan, anything that you want to drop out?
Maybe just one last anecdote, if that's okay.
Sure.
We demonize anyone who wears the swastika today. But on the last day of the Nazi occupation in Norway, my mother she was a teenager, and she was out one day on the last day, and she sees a soldier garbed in, obviously, a Nazi military uniform, not SS. He was a rank and file. And he was skipping down the street. A young guy, you know, and for a guy to skip, think about this, the 40s, things are a lot different, you know. But he was skipping, clicking his heels, and almost cheering. And so she's, you know, goes up to him, Wie geht's? What's going on? I get to go home, he said. The war's over. I finally get to go home. And it showed her that this was not a monster that had invaded and occupied. These were people directed by probably a monster. But there was a good chance a lot of them didn't want to be there as much as they didn't want them there. And I think that's important, is that now, again, I can't speak for modern day warfare because I'm separated from it. I don't have that same kind of personal connection that I did with World War II. So I couldn't tell you if an Iraqi soldier would act the same, or if they are completely batshit crazy and, you know, weren't planning to go home. I don't know. But for a concept that still resonates terror with us, and you know, just looking at that symbol, we know what it evokes in people. It's an emotional response that is so powerful. To know that behind some of it, there was at least some humanity. And I think that's, and this dovetails a bit onto what Tech had said about the generals, the leaders, that ultimately they're the ones that are making the war. The soldiers are just the tools. They're the implementation of it. And when it's all said and done, when it's over, when the shooting stops and it's time to not fight, we have to understand that these were human beings we have made war on. These are people that share our genetic code. We fight amongst ourselves. We destroy ourselves thinking we're destroying something that's different, but it's not. You know, there was a campaign years ago put up by veterans, and it was called Never Again. And they would always run their commercials around this time of year, where veterans wanted to raise awareness of just how horrific war can be, how hellish it is, how terrible. And as I said before, this action does not exactly bring out the best of humanity. I think everybody can agree with me on that. And I think we have to stop beating the war drums constantly. And we have to stop electing leaders who get by on how bombastic they are and how rebelliously. I've had a bottle of wine here. Shut up. We should not be electing people who are charismatic and controversial.
Can I just add to that just one thing? I'd like to see that the people who I'd like to see an end to the state of mind that enables that kind of thing.
Yeah, me too.
Populism shouldn't exist. Well, like, if it's popular for a rational reason, but if it's popular, rational popularity, is that a new term?
My alcohol-addled mind thanks you for the quick save.
No.
But no, I'm one generation removed from one of the two most tragic wars in human history. And I don't know if it consumed my parents. I mean, they did their best to raise 5 kids, and I think they did pretty damn good. Which means, you know, we can do better, and we must do better. And we have to stop. We have to stop thinking with the gun, the cross, or whatever holy symbol first.
Whatever's brandish status.
Yeah, we have to stop thinking about what we're going to brandish in front of that which we don't understand, and simply present ourselves as human beings. And we're not there yet. We're trying. But damned if things are not just throwing one obstacle after another in front of us. You know, just when we think we've made a step forward, something pops up and knocks us 2 steps back. But we have to keep we have to keep going, because if we keep going the way we are, I fear for the next generation. I fear for the next 2 generations.
Rinse and repeat.
Unfortunately, I think that's what inevitably is going to happen. I'm not sure. I don't know if we are at a place where we can break the cycle. I'd like to think we are, but
with our technology, how it's evolved, we better hurry up.
Agreed. Okay, I've said too much. I've said way too much. I'm sorry.
And I added too much.
Okay.
So let me just close it out with this. Stephanie had called me out on a piece from what I was saying before. What is formally declared, when I was talking about formally declared war, is irrelevant. Admittedly. But I was trying to point out that formal declared war is fortunately not something that is currently happening. That is good. The fact that there are all of these little, for lack of a better word for it, police action type locations, peacekeeping forces, and whatever other little bits and bobs you want to call it, that's bad. That is a bad, and I will admit it. I couldn't not. Because, well, let's face it, anytime there are people dying for no other reason other than you're different and you've got different resources that I want, regardless of what they are, material or otherwise. That's a bad. But there is a line from a movie, and I never really put it into the context of what we were discussing earlier with warfare, where, you know, groups, larger and larger groups, are incredibly monstrous in what they will do, where you get down to the individuals. It's like the football game across the no man's zone in France for Christmas in the middle of World War I, where both sides just basically said, you know what, we're going to fight not with hand grenades or bullets, we're going to fight with yelling at the top of our lungs and singing Christmas songs until we drown you out because we can. We'll sing louder than you. Fuck you guys. Only to finally have them pull out a football and play in the no man's zone and trade chocolate and pictures and just
And schnapps. Let's not forget the schnapps.
Schnapps.
But putting that now into perspective for myself, I can't believe that I'm going to yet again quote Agent K. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. Wow, man. You take that one step away from just society at large and transfer it over to warfare. An individual is caring and doesn't want to hurt somebody that isn't looking to hurt them.
We don't want other people's shit by default. People have to make us want it.
But my point is, we individual people are the ones that make all the difference. Every single person is another link, is another piece of movement. We have the opportunity every day to do the right thing. Sometimes it's harder than others. And we, lay people, we may not be in the military or in politics, but we can make the difference to make sure that we teach. And sometimes that's all that you can do. Sometimes that's all that you have to do. So we do our part here. And we respect the memory. And we honor the sacrifice of those who came before us. And continue to hope that maybe, just maybe, actual warfare can actually just be a thing of the past once and for all. Even if that day is not going to be today. As always, everyone, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We hope that you found something worthwhile in all of our perspectives and found something worthwhile to think about for yourselves at this point. I want to very specifically thank Stephanie. I know that you're the only one that's been chiming in tonight. And thank you for doing that, of course. I know full well that you've kind of challenged me on a couple of different pieces, and thank you for that. I don't ever want you to think that I don't appreciate that, or anyone else that's listening also. You know, honest discussion is a good thing. And call me out if I'm wrong, I'll take that, and I'll own that, and I'll correct it.
Never condemn questioning.
No. exactly right. And that's the whole damn reason why we got this the way that it is. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I have to find for the show notes and possibly to correct myself on a couple of pieces. So let me go ahead and get us on out of here so I can see about doing that. Joseph, thank you very much for your time. You have yourself a good morning, and enjoy the new timetable because of, daylight savings and all that happy horse shit now.
I think we're synced again.
Sure, I'll take that. But
I think, well, by looking at my clock, 2 weeks ago, I had to wake up at a hella shower. But I think we're finally aligned.
Fair enough. Thank you for your time, man. You have yourself
thanks,
good.
man.
UnrenownedTech, you take good care of yourself. Enjoy your pussy party out there.
Do I get to go to sleep now?
Yes, you do. Knowing full well that some of the elections are not quite done yet, so you might have more Democrats coming into town.
Maybe we'll see what happens and what stunts are pulled.
Yeah, true that. But you have yourself a good rest, man.
Thank you.
Joey, also, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for being awake enough. I appreciate it.
It's rare these days.
No, I know. See, I'm teasing him because he started off before we came on the air quite tired and woken up quite a bit. So thank you for your time, man.
It's what I do.
And Dalan, of course, thank you for your time, man. I really do appreciate it. You have yourself a good sleep.
I plan to. And if you guys saw me kind of gazing not at the camera tonight, I was actually hard at work updating the website. It is now up to date, up as of today. So that's over at Holy Crap. See this? This was full when I started.
Okay, everybody. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just broke out. You're like laughing. Holy clap.
Okay.
Holy clap
the broadcast.com.
Holy clap the vlogcast. Everything you needed to know about syphilis.
Yes.
Okay, look.
Domain listing number 2.
Better
Holy
reserve it.
crap, the vlogcast.com.
I'm sure it's taken already.
Oh, man. Yeah. So that's the podcast version where everything is audio. And as I said, everything is up to date as of last week's episode. So I said I was going to do it. I finally did it. And yeah, my computer can rest a little bit easier knowing that all that shit's done now. So,
thank you, man.
And if I decide to work with this current drunk state and maybe blather a few things out that we wouldn't cover on the show, you can catch that over at inthewind.yo5.ca.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate it. I really, really do. And you can tell how much I appreciate it because I have not called you our audio bitch this whole entire night. So there you go.
Well, I'll be getting back into being my own audio bitch here, hopefully tomorrow. I got a 3-day weekend because of what we call Remembrance Day. Yes, it's tomorrow, but the company that I work for decided to give us Monday off. Oh, one other thing.
Yep.
Tomorrow night from 7 to 9 p.m. Mountain Time, I am going to be doing a Remembrance Day themed show in Second Life as a DJ. Be playing, the occasion, like mostly war-themed music, throwing a couple of anecdotes out there. This is something I do every year if my scheduled time rolls around this particular day. It's not much, but it's what I do. So,
okay. You've got a you're going to put out the word on Twitter account, perhaps, or something?
It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on. I might do it on Facebook. We'll see if I remember. But yeah, definitely on Twitter.
Okay.
So, and I'll provide a link to the Shoutcast stream so that you don't necessarily have to be in Second Life to listen, but you can always catch it remotely.
Fair enough, man. Thank you. So, as mentioned, of course, yes, you can head on over to Holy Clap the Vlogcast. I don't know how to say it at this point. Holy
ain't
crap!
drunk enough, boy.
No, I've had
And
no
when I'm
alcohol.
on it, you can call it "Holy Clap the Frog Cast."
We'll do, we'll start doing that. We'll make T-shirts and sell those and run it from there.
The
Shit,
variation
We
possibilities
really
are
don't
Side of
endless.
spotted
discuss-
dick.
We
The-
really don't need to be discussing syphilitic amphibians, okay?
I can't believe that you actually pronounced that right the first time. Well done. That's actually very good. Anyway, as always, thank you guys. If you'd like to go ahead and get the audio version of the podcast, the link is over at holycrapthevlogcast.com, as is all of our contact information. If you'd like to send voicemail, phone number is 859-HCTV-554, 859-428-8554. I would really like to get actual voicemail instead of, robocalls for election day. Thank you.
I actually got that. I decided I had enough of my phone ringing, so I picked up, and a human being, after a brief silence, because it was robo dialed is what it was.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hi, we're doing a quick survey of a single question." I said, "Okay, 42," and I hung up. It may not be the answer to the question that they had, but it was an answer.
Yes, it was. So, somehow or other, I don't think that they have a spot for asshole on their plug sheet, but sure, yeah, whatever. We'll go from there.
I identify as a cat.
They could just write it in.
Yeah, we'll just write it in. All of our contact information is over there at the website. If you would like to drop us a couple of dollars to help offray some of the costs for maintaining the domain information, that's of course over at patreon.com/HCTV. Other than that, I think we're good. For those of you that are current military or past military, thank you. Thank you for your service, and know that you are valued members of society, whether whatever administration you have worked under admits it or not, or shows it or not. You are respectable people, for the most part. There are a couple of you that are assholes. I'm thinking of Tailhook. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm bringing up shit from way back when. Yeah, that's that. You were not part of the Tailhook investigations, but anyway, different division entirely. But even so, just thank you. In the meantime, we'll see you all again next week, minimally. Until that point, as always, I wish you all the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. And of course, my lady, 13 plus years on, I am still in love. Matane Fujin. I love you. I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everyone, as always, good night.